New York City never slept, but tonight, it was practically vibrating. The skyline glistened like a glass of champagne under the amber sunset, casting a golden sheen over Manhattan's elite skyline. At the very top of the Orem 1 Tower, the penthouse buzzed with preparations for the event of the season, the Golden Masquerade, hosted by none other than Lex Vandermeer, billionaire investor, nightclub mogul, and tabloid magnate. Lex was a man who didn't just throw parties, he orchestrated spectacles. The guest list included Hollywood A-listers, tech giants, models, and politicians. The theme was opulence. No expense was spared. Gold-plated invitations had been hand-delivered by men in tuxedos. Each guest was required to wear a mask custom-made by European designers. Rumor had it Lex had imported a private jungle of white orchids just to line the entrance stairway. But while glamour brewed above, something else was stirring below. Ella Monroe, 26, stood outside the service elevator, holding a mop bucket in one hand and biting the inside of her cheek. She wore faded jeans, a bleach-stained t-shirt, and the exhaustion of someone who worked 2 jobs and barely slept. For the past 6 months, she'd cleaned the luxury apartments of the rich and unreachable. She had seen a lot, smelled worse, and swallowed her pride more times than she could count. But no one was as condescending as Lex Vandermeer. And tonight, he was in a particularly cruel mood. She had just finished scrubbing the mirrored hallway outside his penthouse when he sauntered out, wearing nothing but a towel and holding a crystal tumbler filled with something expensive and dark. Well, Cinderella, he said, leaning against the doorframe, eyes raking her like she was a novelty. You missed a spot. Ella didn't look up. I'll get it on my way back down. Lex smirked. Actually, I've decided you're going to my party tonight. She blinked, stunned. Excuse me. You heard me. One of my guests backed out, and I think you'd add contrast. He tossed a gold envelope at her feet. Clean yourself up. You're in. Ella stared at it like it might explode. This isn't funny. I'm not joking. He took a slow sip, then smirked. You'll be wearing one of the designer masks from the guest closet. Don't worry, it covers most of your face. Ella clenched her fists. Why? Lex stepped closer. His cologne was sharp, musky, predatory. Because every circus needs a jester. And I'm bored. He turned and walked back inside. Ella stared at the gold invitation on the marble floor. Rage, shame, and confusion swirled inside her. She should throw it away. She should quit. Instead, 20 minutes later, she was standing in front of the guest wardrobe inside the penthouse, slipping into a dress worth more than her yearly salary and fastening a Venetian mask to her face. She didn't understand why she was doing it. But something in her gut told her this night was going to change everything. The moment Ella stepped into the ballroom, it felt like she had entered another dimension. Golden chandeliers glittered overhead like constellations. Waiters in white gloves floated between guests carrying trays of champagne flutes. A string quartet played an eerie, dreamlike melody from a balcony above. Everyone wore masks, some feathered, some bejeweled, others sculpted to look like ancient gods. But it was more than the extravagance. There was a tension in the air, like every conversation held secrets, every smile had teeth. Ella, in a gown of midnight silk and a silver mask, hugged the shadows. She'd been dropped into a world she didn't belong to, and yet nobody noticed. Not at first. She recognized celebrities, an Oscar-winning actress giggling beside a hedge fund CEO, a politician whispering into the ear of a pop star. These were the kind of people she'd only seen on headlines while mopping floors. And now she stood among them, silent, ghost-like. Then she saw him. Lex, wearing a lion-shaped gold mask and a tuxedo tailored so sharply it could have drawn blood. He was holding court in the center of the room, surrounded by models and moguls, laughing too loudly, eyes flicking across the crowd like a predator scanning for weakness. He hadn't spotted her yet. A voice beside her pulled her attention. First time at one of these? She turned and saw a man in a simple black mask and classic suit. No glitter, no arrogance. His voice was calm, velvet soft, a stark contrast to the glitz around them. Is it that obvious? She asked. He chuckled. You're watching the room like a soldier in enemy territory. Most people here are too in love with their own reflections to notice what's happening around them. Ella smiled in spite of herself. And you? What do you notice? He leaned in, just enough. I noticed you didn't come for the champagne." Before she could answer, a sharp chime rang out, the signal that Lex was about to speak. All eyes turned toward the center of the ballroom. Lex raised his glass. "Welcome, beautiful monsters," he declared, his voice theatrical, commanding. "Tonight is about indulgence, mystery, and masks. But be warned, by midnight, some masks will fall, and what's revealed may not be so pretty." Laughter rippled through the crowd, but something in his tone sent a shiver down Ella's spine. He looked directly at her when he said it. The black-masked stranger leaned close. "You should be careful. This isn't just a party." Ella looked at him, confused. "What is it then?" He paused. "A test. And the wrong move could cost you everything." Before she could ask more, he vanished into the crowd. She was alone again, and Lex was walking toward her. Lex approached with the confidence of a man who never heard the word no. The crowd parted effortlessly around him like waves around a yacht. His golden lion mask glinted under the lights, but his eyes, icy, calculating, were locked onto Ella. "Didn't expect you to come," he said, his voice smooth, but edged with mockery. Ella kept her chin up, heart thundering. "I figured if I was going to be humiliated, I might as well do it in silk." Lex smirked. "Touché." He circled her slowly, inspecting. "You clean up better than I thought." Almost convincing. The insult slid off her like water. Somehow, in this dress and mask, she felt more in control than she had in months. "Is this where you parade me in front of your guests like a party trick?" "Not quite," Lex said, his tone shifting. "You're part of a little game I play every year." She narrowed her eyes. "What kind of game?" He leaned in, whispering against her ear. "Each year, I bring one unknown into the lion's den. Someone no one recognizes. If they can last the night without being unmasked, I write them a check for $100,000. Ella blinked. "You're joking." "Not at all." His smirk widened. "You've already made it further than last year's pick." She ran out crying after someone called her a waitress. Ella clenched her fists. "So this is entertainment for you." "It's opportunity," Lex said. "For both of us. You play along, you win money. I get to watch my guests try to sniff out the imposter." "And what if I don't play?" He tilted his head. "Then you go back to scrubbing my toilets tomorrow morning with a story no one believes." Ella looked around. The crowd shimmered and buzzed with secrets. She remembered the man in the black mask and his warning. "This isn't just a party. It's a test." "I'll play," she said. Lex's smile sharpened. "Good girl." He clapped his hands, and suddenly, music shifted. Lights dimmed. A staff member wheeled out a velvet-covered cage to the center of the ballroom. Inside was a golden roulette wheel. Lex turned to the crowd. "Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for the midnight game. Spin the wheel, reveal a truth, or face a dare." The room erupted with cheers. Guests swarmed toward the game. Lex looked at Ella. "Get ready. This is where it gets fun." He left her standing there, the crowd swallowing him whole. Ella exhaled slowly. She had walked into this penthouse a cleaner. Now, she was a pawn in a twisted game. But what Lex didn't know was that pawns, when pushed far enough, could become queens. The ballroom had transformed into a theater of masked madness. At the center, guests circled the golden roulette wheel like moths around a flame. Laughter bounced off the marble walls, but it was laced with something sharper: anticipation, even cruelty. This wasn't party entertainment. It was blood sport dressed in velvet. Lex stood like a king beside the wheel, drink in hand, selecting victims with the flick of a finger. "You. Truth or dare." The crowd chanted, intoxicated by the spectacle. Secrets were spilled, alliances tested. A billionaire admitted to bribing a senator. A model kissed a stranger's wife. A tech CEO was dared to destroy his $30,000 watch on camera. He did, smiling through clenched teeth. Ella stayed on the edge, watching, unnoticed for now. But she knew her turn was coming. And then it did. "Cinderella," Lex said, voice rising above the music, stepped forward. Every masked head turned. Whispers rippled. Ella walked slowly into the center of the circle. Her legs trembled beneath her gown, but her face was stone. Lex gestured to the wheel. "Spin." She did. The wheel clattered like a heartbeat. It slowed. It landed on truth. Lex raised an eyebrow. "Very well. Truth. Have you ever stolen anything from a client's home?" The crowd gasped, half excited, half appalled. Ella stared straight at him. "No." A pause. Then applause. Nervous, curious. Lex tilted his head. You're a better liar than I expected. I'm not lying. He leaned close. That's what makes it even more fun. She stepped back into the crowd, pulse thundering. But then, a hand tugged her arm. It was the man in the black mask. Come with me, he whispered. She hesitated. I know what this is really about, he said. You're not safe here. They slipped through the crowd, past drunken celebrities and scheming socialites, down a hallway lined with mirrors. Behind one mirror, the man pressed a hidden latch. A door clicked open. What is this? Ella whispered. A place where the truth isn't a game. They stepped into a hidden room, dim, lined with screens. Security feeds showed every corner of the penthouse. Cameras tracked every guest. Ella's blood ran cold. Lex is spying on everyone. He's not just spying, the man said. He's collecting leverage. Every truth, every scandal, it's all recorded. Blackmail, business manipulation, reputation warfare. This whole party is a trap. Ella stared at the screens. Why are you showing me this? Because you're different. And because Lex doesn't realize. He just invited the wrong girl to play his game. Ella stared at the screens, her breath caught in her throat. Lex's party wasn't a celebration. It was an ambush, wrapped in gold and laughter. Every drunken confession, every flirtation, every slip of the tongue was being captured. Lex wasn't just rich, he was dangerous. The man in the black mask stood silently beside her, watching her reaction. Who are you? She asked finally, her voice low. He hesitated, then removed his mask. Ella gasped. He was younger than she expected. Early 30s, sharp cheekbones, intelligent eyes. But there was a quiet intensity in him, something haunted. My name's Julian Hale, he said. I used to work with Lex. In what way? She asked, cautious. As a fixer, Julian replied. I cleaned up his messes. Bribed, buried, erased things. I've seen what he does to people who cross him. He looked away, jaw tight. But then he crossed someone I loved. Ella's heart stuttered. What happened? My sister was one of his guests 2 years ago. She thought she could play his game. She didn't know what she was walking into. What did he do to her? Julian's eyes turned glassy. She vanished. Lex claimed she overdosed. There was no body, just silence, and a payoff offer if I kept quiet. Ella stepped back. Why are you telling me this? Because you're inside now. And you're not just some pawn he picked to mock. He's testing you, watching how far he can push before you break. Ella swallowed hard. Why me? Julian's gaze locked onto hers. Because you've got fight. He sees it. He wants to crush it. She glanced back at the monitors. On one of them, Lex was laughing with a senator. On another, a guest was crying alone on the rooftop terrace. Ella turned back to Julian. Why not go to the police? I tried. They're on his payroll. Reporters too. But we can still expose him if we get proof. Audio. Video. A confession. Ella looked down at the mask still in her hand. The girl who came to clean a penthouse hours ago was gone. In her place stood someone with purpose. If I'm still in his game, she said, then I'll win. And I'll get you your proof. Julian nodded. Then you'd better get back out there before he suspects. He handed her a tiny earpiece. I'll guide you. Just keep your mask on. And no matter what he says, don't let him know you've seen this room. Ella slipped the earpiece into her ear, heart racing. What's the plan? Julian gave a thin smile. We're going to burn the masquerade down. Ella stepped back into the chaos of the ballroom, the heavy door to the secret surveillance room clicking shut behind her. The noise hit her like a wave. Music, laughter, clinking glasses, and somewhere beneath it all, the hum of lies. Julian's voice whispered into her ear. He's watching you now. Left side, near the champagne fountain. Act natural. She turned her head slightly and saw Lex leaning against a column, a predator disguised as a host. His mask was off now, revealing the sharp jaw and smug smile that made headlines and ruined reputations. He raised his glass to her. A mock salute. Ella forced a smile and walked toward him, her heart pounding like a war drum. You're full of surprises, Cinderella, Lex said, eyes glittering. I expected you to crack by now. I'm just getting started, she replied smoothly. Lex laughed, but there was a flicker in his eyes. He didn't like surprises, not from her. Come, he said, linking his arm through hers. It's time for a toast. He guided her onto a raised platform at the front of the ballroom. The crowd turned. Murmurs buzzed. Champagne was poured. Lights dimmed. A spotlight found them. Lex held up his glass. To mystery, to masks, and to the courage of those who dare step into the lion's den. Applause followed, but under it, Ella heard Julian again. Good. He's drawing attention. He's preparing something. Watch him. Lex turned to her, and, for just a second, the charm dropped. I know who you are, he whispered. And I know you've spoken to someone. Don't play dumb. Ella's blood went cold. You're paranoid. He smirked. No, I'm prepared. And then he kissed her cheek. The room erupted in cheers. Flashbulbs popped. Phones came out. Social media accounts buzzed. But Ella wasn't listening. In her ear, Julian's voice had gone sharp. That kiss. It was a signal. Look up. Security's moving to the east wing. He's about to shut down the surveillance room. Panic surged through her. He knows, she murmured. You have 5 minutes to get out. Meet me by the service stairs. Now. Lex leaned closer again, voice honeyed and cruel. The show's almost over, darling. You've been very entertaining. Ella smiled sweetly. Then she drove her stiletto heel into his foot and bolted. The crowd gasped. Lex shouted. But Ella was already gone, sprinting in heels down the side corridor, through the orchid-lined hallway, past startled waitstaff. Julian's voice guided her like a lifeline. Left. Through the kitchen. There's a hidden exit behind the wine racks. She burst through double doors, nearly colliding with the chef. The kitchen staff stared as she tore past them, knocking over silver platters and trays of oysters. Behind her, shouts. Footsteps. Lex's security. She reached the wine rack. Julian was waiting. He yanked the hidden door open. In here. They disappeared into darkness. The hidden door slammed shut behind them, cutting off the sounds of pursuit. For a moment, everything was still, just the echo of their breathing in a narrow, pitch-black corridor lined with old concrete and the faint scent of mildew. Julian flicked on a small flashlight. The beam revealed a narrow stairwell leading downward into the bowels of the tower. This building used to be a private bank before Lex bought it, he explained, voice low. He kept the old vault tunnels as part of his aesthetic. But they're more than just vintage charm. They're escape routes. Or trapdoors, depending on who's using them. Ella followed him down, her heels clicking on the metal steps. He knew I'd find you, didn't he? Julian nodded grimly. He didn't expect you to be smart enough to act on it. But now, he knows we're a threat. That changes everything. As they descended deeper, the glamour of the masquerade felt a lifetime away. Ella's gown snagged on the rough wall. Her fingers trembled slightly. But inside, her fear was sharpening into something harder, resolve. At the bottom, Julian led her through a rusted steel door into what looked like an abandoned vault. Dust covered the floors. Old security panels blinked weakly. But on one wall, a server rack, humming faintly. Ella's eyes widened. Is that? All the recordings, Julian confirmed. Audio, video, voice recognition logs. Lex keeps local backups of everything. Too paranoid to trust the cloud. He sat down at a console and started typing. Ella moved to the screen and saw thumbnails of surveillance footage. Lex handing bribes to judges, threatening ex-business partners, drugging drinks at private dinners. It was enough to ruin him 10 times over. Her stomach churned. He's worse than I thought. Julian nodded. He runs his empire on blackmail and leverage. You'd be shocked how many names you'd recognize on these tapes. Ella stepped back, dizzy with the weight of it. So what do we do? Julian looked up at her, his face illuminated by the screen's cold glow. We leak it, but not all at once. Strategic drops, one scandal at a time. We expose him piece by piece, while we stay in the shadows. Ella hesitated. And if he finds us? Julian handed her a small flash drive. That's why you need to disappear tonight. Take this. Leave the city. I'll keep him chasing ghosts while you vanish. But Ella didn't move. She looked down at the drive in her hand, then back at the screen. Her reflection stared back at her from the glass, half covered by her silver mask, eyes blazing. No, she said. I'm not running. Not anymore. Julian frowned. Ella, I've cleaned his floors. I've washed his toilets. I've watched him laugh while stepping on people like me. I'm not disappearing. I'm going to stand in front of the world, take off this mask, and burn him down publicly. Julian stared at her, stunned. And then, slowly, he smiled. Then let's give the world a show they'll never forget. By sunrise, New York was already buzzing, but it had no idea what was coming. Ella sat alone on a rooftop in Midtown, the city sprawling below like a concrete ocean. She wore no mask now, only a plain black coat over her gown and fire in her eyes. In her hand was the flash drive. In her ear, Julian's voice fed calm, precise instructions. "Are you sure about this?" he asked. "Yes," she replied. It's time someone looked him in the eye. Below, in the lobby of one of the city's top media networks, a delivery was being made. A manila envelope addressed anonymously to the executive producer of NYC Unfiltered, a live morning broadcast known for exposing political and corporate scandals. Inside the envelope, a teaser video. 3 minutes of uncut surveillance showing Lex Vandermeer offering hush money to a city judge. The real hammer was the note attached. "Want more? Watch your own broadcast at 8 a.m. sharp." Julian, watching from a remote van parked down the block, patched into the network's live feed with a hidden backdoor. Ella's message had been recorded just hours earlier. One take, no edits. She had stared straight into the camera, and she had named names. As the clock ticked toward 8 a.m., the city's elite, many of whom had attended Lex's masquerade just hours before, sat down with their coffee, ready for the usual gossip and fluff. Instead, they got Ella Monroe. Her image filled every screen. She introduced herself, plainly. "My name is Ella. You don't know me, but I've cleaned your bathrooms. I've picked up your broken bottles. I've listened while you whispered secrets into your champagne." She paused. Let it sink in. "Last night, I was invited to a party thrown by Lex Vandermeer, a man you all praise, fear, or owe. I was the entertainment. A poor girl in a rich man's circus. But while you danced and drank, I listened. I watched. And I recorded." She listed names, actions, backroom deals, threats, all accompanied by time-stamped footage, blurred faces replaced by subtitles, voices cleaned for clarity. It was devastating. Precise. Lex's empire began to crack in real time. Phones started ringing in every office tower in Manhattan. Legal teams scrambled. Politicians went silent. Journalists huddled. Hashtags exploded across social media. Hashtag the Golden Masquerade. Hashtag Ella Unmasked. Hashtag Vandermeer Leaks. Julian's voice cut through the chaos in her earpiece. "It's working." He's panicking. But it wasn't over. In the penthouse of Orem 1, Lex stood shirtless, a glass of bourbon in hand, watching Ella's face dominate the TV in his sleek kitchen. His phone buzzed nonstop. Investors pulling out. Lawyers jumping ship. Then, his private server's control screen blinked. Data dump initiated. He screamed. But there was nothing he could do. Ella Monroe, the girl who scrubbed his floor, was now the face of his destruction. And the world had just met her. By noon, Lex Vandermeer's name was poison. Stockholders in his real estate empire were unloading shares at record speed. One of his nightclubs was raided by the FBI. 3 major news outlets had filed lawsuits. Old enemies crawled out from their holes to pile on, each with their own receipts. Lex's empire, once so untouchable, was imploding live for the entire world to witness. And yet, inside his penthouse, he was eerily calm. Lex stood barefoot on the balcony of Orem 1, staring down at the city that once bent to his will. His phone lay shattered behind him. Every attempt to silence the story had failed. Public opinion had turned on him like wolves. Inside, his living room buzzed with panicked advisors, those few still brave or stupid enough to answer his calls. "She's just a janitor," one of them barked. "We can spin this. Say she doctored the footage. Maybe she's working for a rival." Lex said nothing. Another advisor whispered, "Lex, there's one option left." Lex turned slowly. "What?" "Pay her. Buy her silence. Make her disappear." Lex's laugh was hollow. "You think this is about money to her? She's no one." Lex's voice dropped. "Not anymore." He walked away, into his study, locked the door. He opened his private safe and stared at what was inside: photos, documents, flash drives, and a small velvet box. He picked it up, opened it slowly. Inside, a golden locket. It belonged to his mother. Lex had grown up dirt poor in Detroit, son of a drunk and a seamstress. He clawed his way to the top through bribes, betrayals, and brutality. He buried his past, reinvented himself. But Ella had reminded him of the thing he feared most, who he used to be. Meanwhile, across the city, Ella and Julian sat in a small cafe in Queens, unmasked and unknown among the crowd. No one recognized her yet in this neighborhood. She held her phone, watching news alerts pour in like a tidal wave. Lex Vandermeer's name was trending in 26 countries. Julian watched her carefully. You did it. No, Ella said. We did it. She paused, then added, but it's not enough. Julian blinked. What do you mean? He still has secrets. Leverage. People are scared to go after him fully. She leaned forward. We finish it. Tonight. Julian leaned back. You really want to go back in? I'm not going back, she said. I'm going to bring him out. The sun had barely set when Ella arrived at Orem 1 again. This time, not through the service entrance, but through the front lobby. No mask. No mop. No shame. She wore a fitted black coat over simple slacks, her face bare and calm, eyes unwavering. Reporters swarmed the building now, but she walked through them untouched. Security hesitated, recognizing her, but Julian, already inside, had handled the systems. She took the private elevator to the penthouse. At the top, Lex was waiting. Alone. He stood in front of the massive windows, glass of bourbon in hand, dressed in all black like he was attending his own funeral. You have guts, he said without turning. I'll give you that. I came to finish this, Ella replied. He turned, smiled. A tired, cracked version of the man who once mocked her in a bleach-stained shirt. You already won, Cinderella. The kingdom's burning. What more do you want? Ella stepped forward. The truth. The whole truth. On camera. No edits. I want you to confess. Lex laughed, genuinely this time. You think I'll let you destroy me more than you already have? No, she said. I think you want to be remembered for something other than a mask and a mansion full of lies. He narrowed his eyes. What makes you think I care how I'm remembered? Ella stepped closer. Because the only thing left of you will be the story I tell. And if you don't speak now, I'll make sure that story is written without mercy. There was silence. A long, bitter one. Then, slowly, Lex reached into his desk, pulled out a voice recorder, and hit record. He began to speak. Names. Dates. Payments. The night Julian's sister disappeared. The offshore accounts. The falsified contracts. The bribes. The threats. The manipulation. His entire rise, from teenage hustler to king of the skyline, laid bare in a quiet, hollow voice. When he finished, he looked at her. Will that satisfy your justice? No, Ella said softly. But it'll give it a start. She turned to leave. Ella. She stopped at the door. You remind me of who I was before the money, he said. That scares me more than anything. Ella looked over her shoulder. Then maybe there's hope for you. 3 months later, Lex Vandermeer was indicted on 23 federal counts. He pled guilty to 8. His fortune was seized. His properties auctioned. The tabloids turned him from icon to cautionary tale. Ella Monroe, once a nameless cleaner, became a national voice for whistleblowers and exploited workers. She didn't cash in. She didn't sell out. She started a foundation, the Unmasked Project, to protect others like her. Julian stood beside her, no longer in the shadows. At a small press event in Brooklyn, a journalist asked Ella, "What made you stand up to one of the most powerful men in America?" She smiled. Because someone had to.